Hello, vintage drum nuts, all you collectors out there. Jim Messina here once again. Say, the last segment I was talking about what I termed wacky drum sets, okay? And that had to do with drums that had been orphaned, drums that were kind of used up, but that were still vintage, that were never going to find a place again because they were just too odd. And I would talk about giving them a purpose by putting them into what I call a wacky set. So if you look at what's behind me, you might say, hey, I recognize that. That really looks like very similar to a Slingerland 1940s rolling bomber kit. Well, that's exactly what I modeled it after, but that's not what it is at all. It's one of my wacky sets. The only real authentic Slingerland rolling bomber to this set is right here. This is the snare drum, and I showed you this before in another segment talking about wartime drums, but that's not the real focus, the fact that it's a rolling bomber snare. It's just the drum that started out this wacky set. I started out with this drum, and I thought, you know, I'm never going to find a complete rolling bomber set, or maybe I was just too anxious, didn't want to wait, so I'll build my own. So I had these orphan drums again. I had the right size tom. These may not even be Slingerland. This might even be a leady here, but the thing is, what really sealed the deal was I was up in Cleveland, Ohio, visiting John Stiebel's drum shop. And he's going to be at the Chicago show this year, so look for him. But I was at his shop, and I found an old, like 1920s bass drum, okay? And it had these lugs on it. Now these are broken. These were part of the project, but they had been damaged, and they were mounted on this like 1920s era shell, which is not right. You know, rolling bombers were what, in the 40s? They were wartime drums from the Second World War. But these lugs were usually made out of rosewood or walnut, and I found these mounted on a bass drum that really should have had the long rods, T-handles, claw hooks, and a center post. That's what should have been on this bass drum, because I know this was not the correct bass drum. So someone must have had a rolling bomber set that got damaged, because all the lugs were very charred, brittle. They had been near a heat source, like a furnace or something like that, for many years. Anyways, I bought that bass drum, mailed it down here to Florida where I live, and started on the project. Took those lugs off, put that bass drum aside, and that'll probably become part of a wacky set too, mind you. But anyways, we started with working on this set. So I found a Russian guy here in town. He's the husband of my our seamstress that does our alterations. Turns out he's very good at woodworking, and he agreed to make these lugs for us. So here's one of those lugs right here. I got some rosewood, and he came up with really a dead ringer for those Slingerland rolling bomber lugs. Now there's only one other person I've seen making these. He had a bucket full of them on eBay. Same thing, dead ringer. The only thing is, you know, finding the right inserts. We were using a nut, and of course the screws don't match. They're not, you know, authentic. But anyways, that's what we have on this set right here. Now some of them are the real thing, and some of them are the reproductions. Okay? You tell me which is which. Then of course we got the wooden hoops from Precision, and we got the Continental White, because I find that's the closest thing to 1940s the diamond pattern, or the marine pearl, because it's the large pattern, large diamond pattern. The only problem is at that time you couldn't get yellowed, the correct yellowing to it. Since then, I mentioned in my other segment that I believe Color Wraps is a new product out now that has all the different hues. So had I known that, I would have probably gotten the Color Wrap so we could match this snare right here. 26-inch bass drum. Maybe I'll get some close-ups of this if I can for you. But really, it's a fun set. I can take it on the job, tell people this is modeled after 1940s wartime Slingerland rolling bomber set. A lot of fun. Again, the American vintage heads from Roy Burns Aquarium. Very useful for this kind of application. We've got fiber skins on the top of these, and I managed to score one of the, the Slingerland, the correct cradle for the floor tom. This tom is also equipped with the clamp-on holder just like this, so I could clamp it on the bass drum if I wanted to. But a lot of fun. Again, something you can do with orphan drums and make a wacky set out of them, but something that's in that vintage collectible vein. People could talk about it. You could take it out and actually play them. A lot of fun. Now, before I go, I'm going to pose a question. I had these covered by Freddie at Palmetto Music, who will also be at the show. So another reason for you to go to the show and look up these guys, John Stiebel and Freddie over at Palmetto Music. He did the work on these. He said, you got a little problem, Jim, here, because with the wrap on here, the drum key, when you put it on, very hard to fit on there. At one point, it becomes, you can't fit the key over there, and I don't know why, whereas there's no problem on the true rolling bomber from the 1940s. They don't have that problem. I don't understand what's happening. So if anybody out there can figure out what's going on here, why this drum key won't fit over the head, what's making those tension rods lean in, I don't know, but somebody probably can tell me. So if you want to tell me, just email me. I'm Gumph1234. That's Gumph 1234, where you can see all the videos that I've been messing around with here about vintage collecting, collectible drums, and Jim Messina. Check it out. Thanks a lot.